Okay, today I have Seattle City Council member candidate Tanya Wu. She is running against Tammy Morales for District 2. So District 2 oversees International District, Soto, which is South Downtown, and South Seattle. Good morning, Tanya. Uh, I'm happy that you are joining us. So, can you give a little background about yourself?
Sure, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Yes, I grew up in Beacon Hill. I have a business in the Chinatown International District, and I now live in the Rainier Valley. I've seen the changes. I've seen what happens in neighborhoods that don't have a voice and are forced to live with bad policy, and I'm running to change that. And so I've known you for a long time, so you probably know this, but I'm a community advocate. I push back against the city when it tried to do damage to one of the most endangered neighborhoods in the nation. I learned that, when we amplify our voices and we unite for a common cause, that we can win. And I want to fight for all of South Seattle. I have been able to provide affordable housing. My family renovated the Louisa Hotel into 84 units of workforce apartments. Um, and workforce apartments is, we only charge our tenants a percentage of their income so that no one's forced to pay a rent they cannot afford. I also know how to achieve better public safety with my group, the Community Watch. We're about 3 years old and we build trust and relationships with small businesses, residents, including our in-the-house residents. We go into the encampments to provide meals and try to connect people to resources, basically. And so I am a person of action. I've been in the community working hard to really listen and to really show up. I think we need to elect leaders who will actually, listen to the community and show up instead of just doing what they want to do. And I promise to show up, work hard, and do what it takes to uplift South Seattle together.
Do you think our Chinatown and Rainier Valley is successful and healthy? If not, what would you do to change all that?
Ah, I believe, South Seattle, we're very resilient. Like we know how to come together and uplift one another, despite challenging times. I think the pandemic was really tough on a lot of people, especially our small businesses, especially on individuals having to quarantine for so long, our young people who had to, live out their, school years on Zoom. And so I think we really need more support than ever. And during our pandemic times, I think the city council should have done a better job of planning ahead um, to reopening. I mean, many of our community centers, our libraries are not back up to pre-pandemic programming. And so, we also need to create that economic engine in South Seattle where we help our small businesses who are dealing with a lot of, issues regarding perceptions of public safety, broken windows, and how do we help provide living wage jobs through helping our small businesses, which is the lifeblood of our communities. And we had a lifeguard shortage this past summer. It'd be great to see more training programs to help train up more lifeguards, apprenticeship programs. And so I think, we're seeing a lot of fentanyl addiction. Are seeing 11 deaths a day here in King County. And fentanyl's been on our streets for 2 years. It came up through the pandemic. We should have done more to plan ahead to have some sort of treatment options, more social workers out there, especially on 12th and Jackson, trying to help connect people to resources. And so I think the city council should have done a little better job of pre-planning the reopening of many of our small businesses, our community centers, working in conjunction with our schools, trying to help our young people who have been through quite a bit, as well as our small businesses, as well as our seniors who who not only live through a lot of hate incidences and were fearful, but who still have to deal with that. And something I thought was really amazing was that the Office of Housing provided, I forgot what they're called, but they're like resource coordinators, grants for many of our apartment buildings in Chinatown International District. Skipta is our building manager, was able to get a grant, and having that resource off coordinator come into the Louisa Hotel building to offer resources and help and connection to our tenants, I think was pretty amazing. But it was great to see people come together, help one another out. A lot of amazing groups, also Block Watch groups, including my group, arose during this time. A lot of people came together, help one another. And so I think that was one of the amazing things coming out of the pandemic.
Some people in our community say that we have traffic problems. What do you think, and how would you mitigate those concerns or change the situation?
Yes, I mean, our traffic pedestrian deaths are, last time I checked, midsummer, we were on track with all the previous years. Like, I think we're averaging about 16 deaths a year. It hasn't gotten any better, it hasn't gotten any worse from the last time I checked. But yes, it's a real issue here in South Seattle. I mean, you see a lot of areas that didn't have sidewalks, especially along the border to Tukwila. A lot of traffic issues. We have the only area of above ground light rail in all of Seattle. And so I think it stems from a lot of inequity and a legacy of segregation and redlining. The fact that, South Seattle has the least amount of sidewalks. We have possibly the most, amount of car ped accidents. And we also have the least amount of trees. And so I think we as city council need to work harder to make sure we right these inequities and making sure that South Seattle is at the same rate as other areas of Seattle, like North Seattle. It's a very different feel than here. And so I think we really need to look at traffic calming measures. I know we're doing a lot of this already in terms of, listening to our neighborhoods. Many neighbors have told me I've knocked on over 10,000 doors, 20,000 doors total for my team. And we've been hearing that neighborhoods, many of the people have solutions. They want to see a crosswalk. They want to see, speed bumps in their neighborhoods. They want to see this and that. And they tell me they've done surveys. They felt like all of these issues have been cited to death, but nothing ever happens. And so how do we make this happen? How do we listen to communities and make what they want to see happen? Because a lot of people have great ideas in terms of how do we, you know, help with traffic safety. We just gotta listen. I also think we need to really re-examine a lot of what we've done in the past to see if it's working. I know like a lot of our communities want to hear about upcoming projects and they see a lot of construction on our roads, but they don't know what's going on. I think we need to do that added extra outreach and engagement, especially to our communities of color, to non-English speakers, to get them engaged in the whole process and to let people feel involved.
If you could change one thing in our zoning code, what would it be and why?
Zoning. Zoning is a huge issue, I believe. I don't think people realize like how many of our zoning policies are really racist and how they affect our daily lives, especially in historic areas like Columbia City or the Chinatown International District. But I really think zoning needs to be looked at by neighborhood basis. What works in one neighborhood may not work in all neighborhoods. We definitely need to build more. And I think we also have to look at zoning in terms of how do we build more housing? Especially affordable housing. I believe we need a mix of housing. We can't just concentrate one type of housing all in one area. But I think for all, we need affordable housing throughout the city. And so, how do we look at things like density bonuses for affordable housing? How do we make sure that we protect our trees when we build more housing? But especially, the whole gentrification displacement issue is huge, especially in South Seattle. We saw what happened in the Central District. I think I saw a statistic that was mentioned where in the Central District in the 1990s, 75% of that area was Black families. And now today, census districts only comprises 17% of Black families. Like we cannot allow that to happen here in South Seattle. And so I think a lot of it is trying to combat predatory home buyers. And we see that in the Chinatown International District, where, many of our families, own that property there because back then that was only property that people were allowed to buy. And then we see, these buildings being burnt down, like, the Sui Ing building sold for about $8 million, but to an international developer who in the past, I think they own the lot next door where King's Hookah Lounge is and where that Pokemon Center is. So they wanted to build a like 17-story Marriott hotel there, and the community did not want that. And so that would absolutely gentrify and displace a lot of small businesses as well as a lot of residents. And so how do we retain land ownership to the original families who own that land to be able to build out there and retain our small businesses, retain, our affordable living, possibly. I mean, I always look at the Louisa and, we renovated a historic building. It costs us 3 times more to renovate than to build new, and we're able to make it work. And so how do we save our old buildings, our soul of our district, um, and be able to repurpose these buildings to perform more housing, I think is something that plays heavily into zoning. I think we also need to allow for many of our families to build more middle housing in our lots. It's very difficult to do that now. The process is extensive, I've heard. And so how do we make it easier for people to build like a backyard cottage to provide more housing? And really looking at zoning by neighborhood basis, I think is really important.
What do you hope to accomplish as a city council member?
Oh, a lot. My priorities are public safety, homelessness, and housing. And so I really like to see more movement in those areas. I know we can't solve these issues overnight, but we can make a dent. In terms of public safety, I know that there's a lot of things we can do. We need more youth programming, more so than what we have today. We need to make sure that that's funded and this funding is sustainable. We need to make sure our community centers have, people are asking for late night basketball. I think we need to provide that. Provide more programming with our libraries, mentorship, after school help. Um, and basically, I think we need to have a partnership with our schools. How do we offer these mentorship programs, allow people to have connection to these resources that are not fee based? So that's one. Two is I think we need to create the economic engine. How do we help our small businesses provide more jobs, apprenticeship programs, training programs, not only our schools, but our community centers, so that people are empowered in other ways? And third, we need to offer more community resources like hiring more social workers. We definitely need that third department in the city that is comprised of social workers who can respond to calls. Um, we also need more behavioral health treatment centers. We need more addiction treatment centers, but we need to be able to be out there on the streets, making that connection with community and also with people who are, especially people who are on 12th and Jackson. How do we connect them to resources, build that trust, build those relationships, to figure out what the underlying barriers are and overcome those, and partnership with people to be successful in their journeys. And fourth, we need to make sure that we are able to empower communities to enact their own public safety measures. Like, there are so many block watch groups in the Chinatown International District. There's my group, there's Susan Lee Wu's group, um, and Pioneer Square just recently started their own group. I've been talking to a lot of other communities within South Seattle who want to start their own block watch group. And I think that's amazing. So how do we help these groups? How do we help that network because I know a lot of groups also have access to city funding and city grants, but how do we help make sure these groups are sustainable? Groups like the Southeast Safety Action Network, um, and all these other programs that do amazing work. How do we help lift them up and allow that to continue. In terms of, long-term and short-term solution, that's the long-term solution. In the short term, something that I differ on with my opponent is that we definitely need police. We need to hire more police, but at the same time, we need reform. We need a culture change. We need more accountability in the police department. But we also need more community policing. We need to hire officers who are from our neighborhoods, who grew up here, who know the communities, to better protect the community. We need to support more programming that allows for that. I really love the Before the Badge program, which takes cadets before they go into the police department to our different communities, introduce them to leaders, organizations, and allow for them to have those relationships and those connections so they can come back and serve communities that they have gotten to know. And that program is about a year old. So we're seeing these officers come out. And I always tell people, I met a young lady going to the program, going to become a police officer. She was a baker her entire life. And so having people from varied backgrounds, I think is really helpful. But we definitely need to change the attitude and the tone of the city going forward and how we look at policing to be able to hire more officers. I mean, in the past, we did not actually defund the police department. We demoralized the police department. 600 officers left. So how do we build that back up? And I think that's the attitude and tone of the city, and in making sure that we support and they have the access to resources to be successful. The person I'm running against, the incumbents, actively tries to defund police, and no one wants to work for somebody that does not support them, a manager or a boss who does not, like them. And so I think going forward, I think that's a very important issue to have to tackle.
Where can
Also,
uh,
did I answer the question? I think I answered public safety. Do you want me to touch on homelessness, or is that a question further down?
you could talk about that?
Oh, okay. So for homelessness, I done a lot of work in encampments, and I've gotten to know the people who really are in need of services, in need of help, and who want it. And then I've also gotten to see, the people who prey on our in-house people. We had 8 homicides in Chinatown last year, and I think all but one happened within our encampments. So one of the biggest issues is how do we promote public safety, especially to our unhoused um, neighbors who are exceptionally marginalized. And so I think we need to bring people inside. I think it's inhumane to let people live outside. And I believe a lot of people do want to go inside. I was at the site of a encampment resolution and was just amazed to see that people were coming to the encampment from all over the city because they heard that that encampment was being resolved and housing was being offered. People showed up because they wanted housing. And so how do we make a small dent in this issue? I think we need more RV safe lots. We need more tiny home villages. During the pandemic, we showed that we could house people. How do we look at, offering more motel housing, housing vouchers? The Lisa Hotel works with a group called Housing Connector, that offers about, I don't remember, but about a couple of units goes to people who are formerly unhoused, and they pair people up with a social worker. How do we work more with programs like that, public-private partnerships? Um, but we absolutely need to be doing the engagement and outreach at all times where we have social workers go to areas, and build that trust, build that connection. A lot of people I work with have been through the system, which is broken, and have lost trust. They were separated from their loved ones, they were separated from their animals, or they were separated from their things. How do we find out what the root barriers for every single individual, which is different? And then how do you overcome them and try to find them housing that fits their needs and meets them where they're at? I think, and that comes through getting to know the person, building trust, building relationships, and that absolutely needs to be done. And so a lot of things we could do in terms of building more housing. And I think that goes to my third priority, which is how do we build more affordable housing? So I've been through that process, with the renovation of the Louisa Hotel, early 2015 to 2019, opening right during the pandemic. If we can make it work, I think we can make a lot of affordable housing initiatives work. That we use the MFTE program that allows for us to, build more affordable housing Um, instead of having to pay a fee, there's MHA. Um, we should eliminate that fee and make developers build affordable housing units. We need to especially streamline our permitting system. It takes 2 to 6 years to get a permit, depending on how big your project is. That's too long because every single year, hard and soft costs go up by 30%. So how do we streamline that process, make it faster? I would love to be able to see affordable housing projects get front blind access. And also, how do we streamline design review process as well? I don't think we can eliminate it. I think that's especially important in terms of making sure communities are excited and heard regarding different projects and are involved. But we also definitely need to streamline both processes so that it doesn't take 2 to 6 years. Most other city departments take about 6 months. And so I would like to see that happen for the city of Seattle.
Where can folks find you on social media? Like, do you have Facebook page, like a fan page?
I do, yes. You can find me. VoteTanyaWoo.com is my website. And then I do have a Facebook page and an Instagram page. And let me double check what the name of that is. I think let's see. Oh yeah, it's Vote Tanya Wu. Um, for Instagram and for Facebook, it's a little different. It's Tanya Wu for Seattle City Council District 2. But yes, please friend me. I post there as often as I can. Um, our cap just got lifted, so I could accept donations again. And we're in the crunch time. We have less than a week until November 7th. Um, but I definitely, if I'm having an election night party, so all that information is on my website.
Okay. Thank you, Tanya, for taking your taking time to talk with us today, and I wish you good luck in the election.
Oh, thank you. I had a great time chatting with you. Thanks for inviting me.